Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tia Chuchas. I'm here with Maria Amparo Escandon. She is a New York Times best-selling bilingual author in English and Spanish. Her third novel, LA Weather, which we will be presenting today, was published by Flatiron Books, a division of Macmillan Publishers, and it is also a Reese's Book Club pick and was also featured on Oprah Quarterly. It was also the best book of the month in Barnes and Nobles, Alta, People, Pop Sugar, Bustle, CNN, E! News, Miss Magazine, Nylon, GMA, and much more. She wrote her first novel, Esperanza's Box of Saints, and its Spanish version, Santitos, published in late 1999 by Simon & Schuster and Random House, respectively. Her novel has been the #1 bestseller in the Los Angeles Times bestseller list. It has 21 foreign editions and it has been read in over 86 countries. Her new novel, González and Daughter Trucking Co., and its Spanish version, Transportes González e Hija, was published in 2005 by Random House. It has been in bestsellers lists around the country and is the publisher's book of the year in Spain. She has been named Writer to Watch by Newsweek magazine and by the Los Angeles Times. Her book has been chosen as an annual book selection for several Community Reads public library funded projects. One City, One Book, a novel idea. Also, many of her short stories have been published in journals and magazines, both in English and Spanish. Maria wrote the screenplay Santitos, on which she based her novel. The film was produced by John Sayles and successfully released in Latin America in January of 2001. To date, the film has received awards in 14 international film festivals, such as the Latin Cinema Award at the Sundance Festival, Special Jury Award at the Rencontres Cinemas de Toulouse, sorry, that was in French, in France, and Best Opera Prima by Critique Française. She founded the Other Truth Productions LLC, a content production company where she has a pipeline of film and television projects in various stages of development. She is currently developing the television miniseries Mudflap Girl, based on her second novel, González and Daughter Trucking Co., and a screenplay she co-wrote with Pepe Stepinski. Moish is Moish. I hope I pronounced that right. Without further ado, welcome Maria Amparo Escandon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jackie. Well, I want to thank you for being here tonight. And I also want to thank Tia Chuchas for inviting me again. I think this is my third time. With every book, I have had the honor of coming to speak to Tia Chuchas and to the audience. And I'm very excited to be here with you because the work you do is absolutely incredible. Promoting reading, helping the community by providing stories that are relevant for the community, for the Latino community, for minorities. I think that is just a privilege for a writer like me to be able to be here and speak with you. So I have a little plan, just a very short intro to the book, to the actual book. I don't want to give away anything because, spoilers. But but this book, there are a couple of things that I want to get across with this book. One of them is, in this story, there are 3 Latinas, Mexico-Americanas, who are sisters, and here they are, the 3 sisters. And they go through hell. It's a year in the life of these 3 sisters, and everything happens to them. But there's kind of like an underlying theme that I'm very interested in getting across, and that is that Latinas here in the U.S., we've come a long way from, from being, in the kitchen, raising a bunch of kids, Now we are in the kitchen raising a bunch of kids and having jobs. And that is something that I did want to convey, because that image of the Latina woman in a very traditional way, which is same time, there's a lot more to us these days. You know, I speak with young women who have, careers, and they're married and they have kids and they have jobs, and girls, they're outsmarting boys. They're finishing high school, they're going to college, they're getting degrees, they're starting businesses, and so we have so much power these days. And I do want to emphasize that. I just want to tell that story, because I believe that mindset and the way we think about society and life is very much shaped by stories. And we as storytellers, as writers, we have that responsibility to reflect, what is happening out there in the world. And so I wanted to talk about that. And there are other topics that I find important in this book. The title is LA Weather. And if you're in LA, of course, you know about the weather, and you know how, it's just changing. It's things are, just happening every year is something different. We had tremendous rains that came after these horrible years of drought, and so whether it's due to climate change or not, I'm not a scientist, but I believe that the weather is changing, at least in LA, and we sense it, and I had the opportunity to live in New York for 4 years recently. And when I was there, it was very interesting, because people would come up to me and say, "There's no weather in LA." And I would say, "Oh, really? Come on." What are you talking about? The drought, the fires, the rain, the flash floods, the El Niño, La Niña, La Nada, the atmospheric rivers, the Santana winds, And so I just wanted to explain, or to prove people wrong, when they say there's no weather in LA. Of course there is weather. It's beautiful most of the time, that's for sure, but we definitely have big weather events. And I wanted to talk about that and use it as a backdrop for the story of this family. The paterfamilias, Oscar, he's a Mexican American who's a descendant from people who lived here before California was part of the US. And so his family has been in the area for many generations. His wife, Kayla, is first generation Mexican. She grew up in Mexico City. She's Jewish, Mexican Jew, which there are quite a few. And she meets Oscar when she gets sent as a study abroad program in 12th grade in high school, and they meet, they fall in love, and they marry young. They married when they're 20 years old, and they have 3 daughters. And the 3 daughters are Claudia, who is a chef, a very well-known chef. She's really good. Then there's Olivia, who is the middle daughter, and she's a house flipper, but she's guilty. She feels guilty that she's flipping houses, and so she's very contradictive. I wanted to talk about that as well, about gentrification and what is happening in the neighborhoods, mostly in Latino neighborhoods, people getting displaced. So I wanted to talk about that. So she does that, but then she feels bad about it, and so she goes through a process where she changes directions in her career. And then we have the youngest one, who is Patricia, and she's about 28, and she's a social media guru. I really wanted to develop this character because I wanted to understand my own kids. And so I really got into it, and I said, well, you know, what makes their heart thump? You know, what is it that, you know, that they like and how they think? And so Patricia is the one I had to research more. But in the end, I loved that character, and I think that it helped me understand that generation a lot more. I'm a boomer, so. But anyway, so it's their story. It's a very eventful year. The book is 12 chapters. Each chapter is a month, so it goes from January to December. And then within each month, it's the chapters are kind of broken down into specific dates. So I would say, you know, March 27th, and then this happened on that day. So it's very much like a calendar. And there is a metaphor there also, because I wanted the family to go through this year, you know, this calendar year where all these things happen. And I had a lot of fun because every weather event in the book is real. So the book is 2016, and if it rained that day, I put it in the book. If it, you know, if there was a fire, all the fires mentioned in the book are real fires that I Googled, you know, in the news and stuff, you know. So I had a lot of fun doing that as well. So there's a lot of real stuff going on. So that's kind of the structure of the book. And I wanted to read a little passage so that you would get the idea, but without giving away anything. So I picked a passage that I want to read to you, if that's okay. Is that okay? Yeah, all right. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm going to read without my glasses. Bear with me. I'm going to squint a little. Okay, so this is Patricia, okay? The youngest one. After she dropped off her sisters and called her office to request a flex day off work, Patricia drove to Eagle Rock in Topanga. She'd hiked the Mush Trail many times before and knew she'd have a decent phone signal in case Oscar tried to reach her. That was the birthday gift she wanted, to spend this perfect 72-degree day by herself, walking among chaparral and sagebrush, admiring the Santa Monica Mountains in the distance, and thinking hard about the state of things among the Alvarados, her family. As her legs negotiated the uneven and sometimes dodgy climb along the dirt paths, her mind kept going back to a single question. How had her family become so disconnected? She remembered the days when everyone knew where everybody else was, what everybody else was doing. Every year, color-coded calendars were posted on the fridge and were updated daily by all involved. A tin can with markers sat on the countertop. Yellow for Oscar, green for Kayla, blue for Claudia, pink for Olivia, red for Patricia, orange for Daniel. Daniel is the son of Patricia. She had him when she was a teenager. She's a single mom. And black for family events. It was all there. Danielle's chess club and swimming competitions, Kayla's mammograms and gallery openings, Patricia's parties and weekend trips, Oscar's multiple errands around town, Olivia's school presentations, Claudia's marathons, birthday parties, quinceañeras, bat mitzvahs, weddings, holidays, vacations. Everything was shared. A rhythm, the way the Alvarados moved along the hours and days and weeks of those calendars year after year, had served as a thread of sorts that tied her family together. But by the time her older sisters had gone to college in New York and Miami and had gotten married and moved to their respective homes, something had broken. The calendar had ceased to exist years ago. the markers, still in the tin can, had dried up and were now relegated to the top shelf, with the sous vide cooker, the ice cream maker, and the creme brulee set still in its original box, aging undisturbed. It seemed to her that each member of her family was a top spinning on a surface by itself, unencumbered by what the other tops were doing or where they were going. What surprised her the most was the fact that they still met for Sunday family dinners, rain or shine, with or without husbands, with or without the twins. The twins are a set of toddler twins, twin girls that are the kids Olivia has. But people sitting at a table don't make a family. Monologues don't make a conversation. Even the most delicious meal meticulously prepared by Kayla didn't inspire anymore. And in the past year, she'd watched her father descend into apathy. She didn't rule out depression, but she was more inclined to believe something was bothering him. Had she done enough to figure out what it was? She thought not, and this upset her. She wished she could pry open his mind and extract his pain, his worry. Or was this deterioration part of the process of aging? She wondered if all families went through this emotional separation as the children grew up and the parents got older. Perhaps she had a heightened sensitivity to what was going on because she lived with Oscar and Kayla and could see the day-to-day decline in their care and affection for each other. Why did she live at home anyway? Why she was hoping to hang on to the thread of days and weeks that connected her and her parents and sisters in the family calendar, she decided to ask her loyal Twitter tribe. Am I suffering a bad case of millennialism, or am I justified to be comfortably living in my parents' house at 28? Share your thoughts. She posted her tweet, but deleted it almost immediately, suddenly feeling ashamed of herself at the thought that she might be closer to people she'd never met than to her own blood. So that's just a little passage that I picked out for you, and I would love to see if anybody would like to ask a question. If you don't mind, if you have any questions, I don't know if.
We have a question on Facebook. It's by Neil. Well, quite a lot of people were just saying that they enjoyed the book and like they were just thanking me. And by Neela, she said, or they said, the ending left me wanting more. Were you planning on writing a part 2 or making this a series?
Oh, well, I haven't thought about writing a part 2, but I did write a pilot for a TV series, and it was actually picked up by one of the big streamers. But right now, there's a writer's strike going on, and all the projects are, stopped, and we can't advance any projects. At the same time, the big streamers, Disney, Hulu, Amazon, all these, they are canceling a lot of shows. So I am worried that it might not get made, even though it has been approved. So I'm a little worried, but I'm hoping that that someday this whole thing, will be past us. The previous writer's strike lasted 9 months, and it was I think it was 2008 or something like that. Yeah, like 16 years ago. And that actually, because of that strike, is when reality shows began, because writers couldn't write any scripted material, and so the TV networks devised, let's do reality shows, and so they're unscripted, so we can get away with that, and and so that's how they came to be. So I don't know what's going to happen now. AI, maybe? We'll see. But anyway, I hope that I can do the TV series. But I'm already working on another book, and so we'll see if I come back to the Alvarados and write another terrible year in their lives. Yes.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How did you come to writing about sisters specifically? Like, what about the sister dynamic and sisters and family made you want to write about sisters? I don't know. That's just a question.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I'm a big family person. I love my family. I have a big family, lots of sisters and cousins, and we're just a big family. And I mean, last time we got together, the Palominada, we were 90, all relatives. And so the sister dynamics for me is very interesting. I have a sister who I adore. She's 11 years younger than me. She was like my doll when I was little. I would dress her and change her clothes and play with her. And now she's an adult and we love each other. And I did want to write about that the dynamics where you can fight, but at the end, when it gets really tough, you have to come together, because that's who you have in the end, is your family. So I did want to explore that. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Why do you think it's important to empower women, specifically Latino women, in your novels?
Well, because the narrative is very important, I think, and for us to get past a lot of beliefs and cliches that that we may not be productive. We are very productive. We're raising amazing kids. We're pursuing careers. We're starting businesses. We're creating jobs. There was a really interesting data from a professor, a UCLA professor, who studies this whole thing with the trends and the GDP, which is the gross domestic product of Latinos. If we Latinos were a country, like if you gather all the Latinos and put them separately, like in another country, our economic output, our GDP, would be equal to that of France. We would be the 7th most powerful country in the world, alongside with France. And that sort of tells you, how powerful we really are. And we need to talk about that. We really need to talk about that, because I don't think that out there people really understand the power we have in society and in our economy. And women right now are that driving force. And so that's why I felt it was very important to write about that. Yeah.
There's another question
Okay.
that says, thank you for writing the LA weather. I could relate a lot to the book. I know that the book takes place for the pandemic, but in your opinion, how would the pandemic have affected Alvarado?
Well, I think that for better or worse, because that's the reality, the pandemic made us come together in little groups, whether families or roommates or any form of, some people were really lonely, they were left alone. Some people really created these bubbles, and a lot of young people just went back home. They left wherever they were going to school, and they just went back home. And I hope that most people found it as an opportunity for togetherness and for understanding new dynamics in the family. Sadly, not everybody had that experience, but I think the Alvarados, as a family, a fictional family, they would have come together as they did in the book, you know. And I don't want to give it away, but in the book they all end up living in the same house. So, and it works out for them. It does, you know. They make it work, and that's, I think, an important thing, because where there's a will, there's a way. And I think if you make it work, and things work out and become smooth sailing from there. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question.
Yeah. And by Nila again, just asked, how has it been to adapt the book into the pilot? Have you come upon any challenges?
Well, yeah. Yes, because it's just a different medium. You know, when you write a novel, you know, you have all the time in the world, and specifically you want to narrate and take your time and describe and all that. A script, and more so a teleplay, which is a television screenplay, is fast and, you know, very to the point, and dialogues are short, and, you know, the dialogue is more choppy. You have to, you're more visual, and so you have to think differently. You have to retell the story, but you have to be truthful to your characters, but at the same time, you have to, you know, select scenes that will work better. You know, so it is. It was a fascinating experience. I hadn't written for television. I wrote for film. I wrote a feature film for my first novel, Esperanza's Box of Saints. And the movie came out. It's actually on YouTube, free. You can watch it. Se llama Santitos. It's in Spanish, but it's got English subtitles. And so it was a very different experience, but it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun, because once the book is in print, the story is pretty much, you can't do anything with it unless you write a script, and then you can retell the story in a different way, and that's the fun part, yes.
When writing, do you relate your characters' experiences to your own?
Yes, very much. The question is, when writing, do I relate the character's experience to my own? And yes, of course. I mean, I'm kind of a lazy writer, so I don't do a lot of research. I pretty much write about what I know about, and basically it's my surroundings, my world. And for instance, every time I'm going to start a new novel, I say, okay, what is the seed that I'm going to plant that is going to grow into a tree? This seed is going to be something that comes from inside, because I find that when I'm doing my best writing, when my writing is at my best, is when I'm writing from an honest place, when I'm writing from within. And so I tell my students at UCLA that we all have, right behind our rib cage, we have a well, and it doesn't show up in the X-rays, but it's there, and it's a well, and it's full of all the bad stuff, everything that's happened to us, you know, is in there. And so when I'm going to write, what I do is I throw the bucket in there, and I pull up the bucket from the well, and out comes something that's happened in my life, some fear, you know. So I use that material to write. And the first novel, I used a fear, my worst fear, which was, you know, losing my daughter. What if I lost my daughter? What if I couldn't confirm her death? She go missing, you know, what would I do? And would I pray to all the saints in the world? Yes. Would I set out to find her, you know, anywhere. Would I even become a prostitute? Yes. And I started like, you know, just thinking about everything that I would do. And I said, okay, I'm going to write this, and to double the challenge, I'm going to make it a comedy. And so it came out of a fear, the whole story. The second one also came out of a fear. Gonzalez and Daughter Trucking Company, which is this, I don't know if you can see it. It's a yellow cover, really nice. This is a father-daughter story. It also came out of a fear, something that I could not live with myself. Kill somebody by accident, like run somebody over on the street, or have a car crash, and have another person die because of my fault. And I said, I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to write it. So yes, all my characters have something of me that comes from within me. And I also give them, you know, for instance, the jobs that Claudia, Olivia, and Patricia have. They're all jobs that they do things that I love. You know, for instance, I'm a foodie. I'm a total foodie. I love food, and I love exploring mom and pop restaurants all over town. The little ones, you know, in mini malls, you know, I love going there. And so I said, I'm going to make her a chef, and I'm going to write about food. And I did. And I heard a lot of people who read the novel said, you know what, I was reading your book and I got so hungry because you were describing all this food. And yes. And then Olivia, she's an architect, because I love architecture. I love, you know, the process of building. I love, you know, the culture of the construction workers and how hard they work. All my paisanos, you know, I know a bunch, and they're all amazing. And I wanted to sort of pay tribute to that. And then Patricia, you know, she's social media. She does marketing and advertising. And I did work in advertising for many years in LA. And so I was doing TV commercials in Spanish for Telemundo, Univision, doing radio, you know, so I was writing all these commercials. And so I had this connection with Patricia because she was into that, you know, into branding and advertising, which is, that was the job that paid my bills. So I liked it, and I knew what to say. So yes, to answer your question, yes, very much so.
I have another question. How was the process of writing this book different from your previous two books? Because I know earlier you had mentioned that you took a bit of a gap between some of your books, so I just was wondering how the process was different.
Yeah, the first book was a total, you know, chance. You know, it was like even though I've been writing short stories for many years and poetry and things like that, since I was very young, I'd never written a novel. And you know, I was in my 30s, kind of late 30s, and I said, you know, if I'm ever going to write a novel, I think now is the time. And so I did, but I had no expectations at all. You know, for me it was, we'll see, I'm just going to have fun. You know, I'm just going to write this. And I had a little writing group, and I would bring a new chapter every couple of weeks, and it'd be fun, you know, and that was it. So eventually I finished it and was able to find an agent and got it published, and it was great. And all of that, I say, okay, well, I'm going to write another book. And so I had a really hard time. To me, it changed dramatically, because now there were expectations. Now there were people out there waiting for that second book, and I froze. I was completely frozen. I couldn't write. And then One of the other teachers at UCLA, because I was teaching at UCLA, and one of the other teachers said, you know, I know this guy who's a therapist. He only sees writers, and he's going to help you. And I said, oh my gosh, writers, therapists? So I went to see this guy, and I sat on the couch, and he tells me, you have no idea how many Nobel Prizes have sat on that couch. And I'm like, oh my God. But he told me something very interesting. I did have about 5 sessions with this therapist, and he said, well, have you ever asked yourself why there are so many one-hit wonders? It's just people, first don't have expectations, and then there are expectations, and that, you don't believe you can outperform yourself. You don't believe you can do anything better, and then you just don't do anything anymore. But you have to think of your writing as the recess and your job as school, and so your writing is you keep doing it for fun. You keep doing it because it's something you love, not because somebody else is waiting for you to produce anything. And it really helped me, and I kind of got unstuck, and I was able to write the second novel. So big change. And then between the second novel and the third novel, I got sick with cancer. My daughter got sick. I moved to New York. I got divorced. Life got in the way, just totally got in the way. So I wasn't able to write. And then when we moved to New York, and I was by myself, away from my friends, away from my family, away from everybody, and I was, pretty much alone and dedicated to me, to my writing, and getting better from my illness and all that. I started to write, and that's when I decided to write LA Weather, and that came out from, I'm going to write about a family in LA, Latino family. And you know what happens when you're, and it happened to me also with Esperanza's Box of Saints. Half of that novel happens in Mexico. And I was living in the US, and when I lived in Mexico, I wasn't thinking about Mexico. I had to come to the US to see Mexico from a distance. It's like, and when you have a photo and you put it up close to your nose, you don't really see the details. You have to sort of see it, put a little distance so you can see everything. And that's what happened with that book. And again happened with LA Weather, because I was in New York and I was writing about LA. So it was all from memory. It was all from my own experience of so many years living in LA. And I said, I'm going to draw from that. And it was interesting because it wasn't like looking at LA at a distance with a telescope. It was more like a kaleidoscope, because it was very personal, very subjective. And so that's, I think that's what every book has been very different for just different circumstances. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you have another question?
You talked about how between your first and second book, you weren't sure how to start writing again. How do you deal with writer's block now?
Oh, writer's block is a great tool. I embrace it now. I embrace it because I've learned that when you have writer's block, it's really your mind telling you that you're not ready to sit in front of your computer or your writing pad and write a story. The story is not ready, It's like baking, You can't take a cake out of the oven before it's ready. And you can't write a story if it's not right inside your head. So I really make a division. I say, okay, I write in the car, I write in the shower, I write when I go for a walk. I write and then I type when I'm in the computer. But I already wrote in my head. I already have my characters developed, my story. I know where I'm going. I have a plan. I have ideas. Then I just download it. I put it together on the computer. But by the time I sit down to write on the page, I've already done so much thinking that I think that that's what I've learned from having writer's block. If I sit down and write and I'm not ready, I get stuck. And so it's a great tool, writer's block. If I have writer's block, I go out and live my life. I go on the street, I run errands, I do my thing, I work and live my life. And then it may take a few days or a few weeks, but all of a sudden, one day I say, I'm ready. I think that's that's why I use writer's block. Yeah. So if there aren't any more questions,
Let me check if we have any more questions.
Not just people saying that they love, like they can relate a lot to what you're saying.
okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you all here at Chuchas. Oh my gosh, if you're really in LA, you have to drive out here and see this amazing bookstore. The book selection is incredible. They have a children's section that's fantastic. They have a whole section of activism, of just Latino authors, local authors. The book selection is incredible, and everybody here, the staff is just amazing. And I want to thank you, and thank you so much for having me here. And well, I hope you had a good time. I did. Okay.